Welcome to Upstack America's IT training programs. My name is Bob and I'm the IT training lead for Upstack America. Today's training is on data science and specifically on artificial intelligence and machine learning. Our trainer will take us through today's session is Paul DeBacker. Paul is a data scientist with outstanding work experience managing digital transformation projects on artificial intelligence and machine learning. He also holds extensive experience as a solution architect for robotics process automation, and also he has experience as a developer for robotics process automation. Paul holds a Master of Science in Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning from the University of Texas in Austin. He also holds a first-class honors Bachelor of Technology degree from Anna University, Chennai. Thank you for watching and we hope you will enjoy the training.
Ready. Okay, so let's get started. So this week I think what we are talking about, it's quite relevant to our topic that we're going to talk today, right? So today we're going to learn about the second module. So last 4 sessions we have completed the initial and the basic module for us. So we have completed introduction to Python as a part of your Udemy sessions, and then we have also completed in our session introduction to Python, where we learned about various Python coding approaches, and then we also covered important Python aspects for machine learning, especially, for example, we looked into NumPy, we looked into pandas, and certain things. We will look into one more approach of pandas, not pandas, but Python, that is for visualization. That is, how do we represent our data once we have some insight, right? So how do we represent? So any representation of data graphically, we do call it as data visualization. So once we learn a little bit about this module, then once we understand the various approaches of seeing a data, of measuring a data, reading a data, then before getting into the practical exercises of machine learning, for example, getting into supervised machine learning, we will see a portion of data visualization as well. That whenever my algorithm is giving me a data output, or let's say not even the algorithm, so let's say I give you a data, okay, any raw random data. So let's say I give you the data of US's COVID cases, right? So you have the states, you have the provinces, you have the number of cases, you have the number of deaths, you have the population density, and all those things. So, and I give you 2 3 tasks. So if I tell you, okay, can you find the average number of deaths that happened across US, right? So what you're going to do, you're going to take the number of deaths column in your Excel and try to find an average. So total number of entries, summation divided by the number of entries. So let's say your average is coming 94. So 94 is the number of people on an average has died in a state, for example, right? So that is the statistics. So then how do you show it to me? You just cannot come and show me like this, right? That, hey, 94 is the average number of people. So you will represent your analysis in terms of a graphical representation or a pictorial representation, correct? To show me or to allow me to visualize what you are trying to show as a data insight that you have analyzed. So that's a part of your data visualization that we will talk about in our future classes. So in today's class, we're going to talk about something very important and also pretty simple, but you should get the basics right before getting into your ML engine and data analysis, because the amount of data that we're going to deal with and the way that we deal with data is nothing but it's pure mathematics. And data, that the way you drive the data to get some insights, right, it's always done through certain statistics, right? So today's session we're going to talk about the statistical approach, nothing with related to machine learning, right? But mathematics and statistics, because that's the measuring criteria or the parameter that we're going to carry forward into our ML analysis. So any ML analysis or data driven analysis cannot be carried forward without statistics. It's an integral part. It goes pretty much hand in hand. Okay. So, what is statistics? So, the topics might be little easier to understand. As a part of our high school, or as a part of our college grad, we would have learned all these things. But just a refresher, and just a bringing all our previous knowledges confined at one single place, so that it helps us in our future, ML related exercises. Because when we get into ML and all those things, data driven analysis is pretty diverse. It takes the center stage there. So we need to have statistical approaches as well to understand about the data, then prepare the data according to the way how a ML model will understand, or a model can give us a better output. So this statistical approaches that we are going to implement is what we're going to learn from here in today's session. Okay, so let's start. So what is statistics? If I ask you, right, you might have your own definition, and it is kind of a easy kind of a thing, right? We already know what is statistics, right, and what statistics are all about, what statistics helps us in doing, and all those things. So statistics is defined as the scientific study, or the area of study which is concerned with developing and studying methods of collecting, analyzing, interpreting, and presenting data. So all these things we have already known. So what are the important things that we are trying to see here? That statistics is nothing but, you can say, is the field of study, or the area of science that is concerned with developing and studying about various approaches to deal with data. And what are these approaches? First one is, how do we collect our data? There could be numerous sources for us to get our data, right? You can do a web scrolling and download the entire Twitter data for last 1 year, correct? That could be your source you are collecting. Let's say you go to kaggle.com and download a specific data set. Okay, so there are a lot of open source data sets that are available, which are legally published online, which you can take. For example, credit risk. So let's say I'm a bank. Okay, I want to understand what are my potential customers whom I can allow certain amount of loan or money, and what is the outcome, that what percentage of the bank, what percent of my customers will become defaulter, or what percentage of customer will return me or pay me back the loan in time, right? So that could be the various sources from where I collect the data. What is analyzing the data? That's what I just said. So if I give you a data of US's COVID-19 cases, and then I ask you to do certain analysis, okay, can you tell me which are the provinces where the cases have surged in last 1 month, right? Can you tell me what is the average number of deaths that has happened in US? Which is the province where the maximum number of deaths have happened? What is the number of COVID cases found as per the population density? So all this information that I want will come from the data that I have given you. How? Only by analyzing, right? So as I said, if I want you to find the average number of deaths across all the provinces in US, what will you do? You will find which column is having the numbers of deaths, right? So if I give you the data, there should be a column which is saying number of deaths per province, correct? So you will take all the numbers of all the provinces. What will you do? You will add them and divide it by the number of provinces. You will get the average. So you will come and tell, okay, Paul, 100 or 120 or 94, or is this the X amount is the average number of deaths that has happened across all provinces? And then I can say, okay, don't go all entire duration, tell me for last 1 month. So what will you do? You will go and you will then filter up your data from October to November, and then recount the average, and then tell me, okay, from October to November, this date to this date, X amount is the average number of deaths, right? This is the basic analysis that can happen. So you will do certain steps to come out with certain insights or conclusions, right? So that's how we analyze the data, right? Then interpreting. Interpreting is nothing but, once you analyze, what is your interpretation, what is your analyze telling, that's what you interpret. So if your analysis is telling, okay, Florida and Washington DC and New York are the three hubs as per the data of COVID-19 cases, let's say these are the top three states, for example. So that's an analytical insight that you have got from the data. That's what you are going to interpret to your team who has asked you to do the analysis. So that is what is your analytical, interpreting that information from your analysis and finally presenting the data, which is very, very, very important. So presenting the data is as important as performing all the other stuffs, because unless and until you are able to convey what you have analyzed, or you are able to analyze, you would be, let's say you're good in analyzing, your analytical insights has been interpreted, but your presentation is not effective, then whatever you have, what you are trying to say through your data driven analysis, it might not reach me, right? So what are you going to do for presentation? You usually, what will you do? You will do a, let's say probably a graph. You will probably take the data and do a bar chart and show me if these are the number of states that I am having. So this might be Washington, this might be my New York, this might be my Florida. Like this, you might represent your analysis in a graphical way and tell me the approaches, right? So that's what is all about. That's all these analysis or the steps comprises of, called as statistical study or statistical measure or statistical method. So now you would be very, it will be very easy for you to relate that why did we start with statistics? Because statistically only we can get all this information as a part of the statistical study. Once we know the data, see, ML, machine learning exercises are always to understand the hidden pattern of the data, something which your analytical insight might not tell. Okay, that is related to your machine learning, but statistics is actually the basic approach for you to understand what the data is conveying, right? Now let's say when I tell you to do an analysis, you told me that okay, these are the 3 states that have highest number of COVID cases in last 1 month. That was pretty much predominant in the data based on the analysis that you did. But when you apply this data to a machine learning model, there might be a hidden outcome that would come up. So let's say, and hypothetically I'm saying, or let's say the hidden outcome might be the number of cases in Florida surges after, let's say Thanksgiving. So that was a hidden insight which you did not identify. But how come it came? Let's say there might be a column which was having date, okay, right? So and the model, we would have identified, we would have given the date obviously to the model as a part of our timing, and then with the number of increased cases, it might would have given me a range that this week to this week that the surge happened in Florida. Now this week to this week is, then you will interpret, okay, this week to this week was my Thanksgiving, so that means the rise in the case in Florida was because of a festival. I'm just hypothetically explaining. So these are the hidden analysis that you can understand from a model. Model might give you some other interesting outcomes, right? That the average number of cases happened in this area or at any particular state came down, but again increased, right? There could be multiple numerous hidden analysis that you can get from your ML exercise. So statistical analysis involves the process of gathering and evaluating data and then summarizing the data into a mathematical form. So whatever we are learning, whatever we are analyzing and interpreting, and then we present it. Presenting is nothing but we summarize our analysis in terms of a graphical representation in a mathematical way, because it deals only with numbers, right? So when I do a graphical representation, I deal only with numbers. So I take the mathematical form to analyze all my contents or all my analysis. So anything on this? Any questions, Kevin, or is it clear?
Oh, that's pretty clear.
Okay. So now, after what is statistics? So why statistics is important, I think you would have understood now, right? So with respect to any analysis that you do, right, with the technology advancement, your internet usage has increased, your social media usage has increased. So the amount of data generated has become so enormous that the corpus is increasing day by day. So all these ML exercises are only, so all these analytical approaches are data driven now. So you need statistics to understand the data and to perform various mathematical steps on the data. So now we talk about data. That's the thing that you hear day in and day out in our life today, right? Because the data around us is huge. Every second there is like 1,000 terabytes of data gets generated around you, right? You take a picture in your iPhone, save it in iCloud. That's the data you have generated today, right? You take a screenshot in your mobile, you send it to me, you have generated a certain amount MB of data, right? So we have to understand the data, or to understand the data there are various forms of data. Okay, because statistically when you try to understand the data, there are various types that has been found by the statisticians across the globe, that we can divide the data or categorize the data into various ways. Okay, so they have thought, okay, so data appears in different types or different ways. So what are the two different types of data? And this is very, very important in terms of statistics. Okay, so the data can be divided into two types across your entire data, the world of your data that you generate. One qualitative data, and another is called as quantitative data. So these are the two types of data that can be created anywhere across the universe. I mean, yeah. So what is qualitative data? The top one, which are non-numeric in nature and cannot be measured. That is called as your, uh, you know, uh, that is called as your uh, qualitative data, where your data is driven, your generated in which is non-numeric in nature, but that means it's not a number, and you cannot measure that type of data. That's where we call it as qualitative. Now qualitative data is further divided into two, and these are very important in machine learning. One we call it as nominal data, another we call it as ordinal data. Okay, now what are nominal? So first we know that we are dealing with qualitative data which are non-numeric in nature, right? And we cannot measure this amount of data. Measurement is not possible. Now we know that qualitative data can either be again two types. That means whatever type it can be, it should not be a number and it cannot be measured. So now we know that subdivided into two. One is nominal data, another is ordinal data. Now what are nominal data? Nominal data are, let's say, your gender, man, women, male, female. So if I give you an employee database, you might have a column in that which is dealing with the gender, whether the male is a female, sorry, whether the employee is a female, whether the employee is a male, whether it's a man or a woman. So that is your data that I give you, which will fall into the category called qualitative, and you cannot measure. You can take a count, how many number of men are there, how many number of women are there, but you cannot measure that amount of data. Okay, next, let's say nominal data could be your names. Let's say if I tell you different hair color brands, you might have different color names. You might have brown, you might have blue, you might have blondie, you might have cherry, you might have pink, you might have black, white. All these names that appear to you are called as qualitative data of type nominal. Again, these are non-numeric and you cannot measure. If I tell you the number of states across US, you can take a count, but you cannot measure the states in US, right? Then let's say ethnicity. So generally nominal data are nothing but deals with your names related data. Let's say all the states in United States are our nominal data. Any name that I give you is a nominal data. Let's say I give you employee IDs of a company. So employee IDs are always nominal data. You can take a count to identify the number of employees, but you cannot measure the IDs. Okay, if I give you zip code of various states, that this might be an interview question. So let's say they will ask you what is the, let's say I have a data set where I have employee ID and I have a zip code. What type of data are those, or what categories of data do they belong to? So you have to answer that since employee IDs and names, employee IDs and zip codes are actually qualitative data, because these are non-numeric in nature and we cannot measure them. And under qualitative, we can subcategorize them into nominal data. So that's how your answer should be in an interview. So because if you don't understand the attribute or the nature of your data, you will not be able to know the data very well. So this is my nominal data. Okay, now the second type of data I have under qualitative is my data called as ordinal. Now what is ordinal data? Ordinal data generally deals with size. Okay, size, grades of a school student, grades. So again, these are non-measurable. Okay, so let's say what is the size of, and these are again non-numeric. So size that are represented in small, medium, large, right? These are the general sizes when you go for a shopping, or XL, extra large, or double XL. These are the various amount of sizes that you find belonging to different types of person. If you are analyzing the sales data, or let's say I give you the product of sales or the product data for any top, let's say clothing company, right? For example, Van Heusen, right? Or let's say Louis Philippe. These are some international brands. Like, so there, if I give you the product data and give some analysis, so if for every product name you might find the size, that how many let's say what is the size of that product that are available in the store. So that becomes your ordinal data, because this is non-numeric and you cannot measure the size, but this is an ordinal data of type qualitative. Next, grades, letter grades. Okay, so let's say mostly these days universities and colleges does not publish numbers or marks, they generally publish grades. So whether you fall into A grade, you fall into B grade, you fall into C grade, you fall into D grade, and every grade has a number. So anybody within 100 to 90 is A grade, anybody from 89 to 80 is B grade, something like this. So these grades, when you see in your data, would eventually and again become your ordinal data. Okay, and then your let's say you have a data which says economic status, like you have low, medium, high. This is again ordinal data. These are non-numeric and you cannot measure how much low, how much high, you cannot measure, you can count it. So these are the various data. So let's say one more example can be ranking of employees or army rankings. So in armies, if you look into any of the army sector, their ranking is very important, right? So they have various various designations of army level, right? So let's say they have colonel, they have lieutenant, various positions in army, right? They have major and all those things. So they have a gradual increasing order of ranking, right? So those ranks of every employees in an army is also a ordinal data, because that has a specific non-numeric and you cannot measure them, but it still quantifies your data. Okay, so this is one type. Then another type that we can talk about is, so this is all qualitative, under which we have nominal and ordinal. Qualitative means non-numeric and cannot be measured. Now next is quantitative. Quantitative is numeric in nature and can be measured. Now quantitative data can be of two types. One is discrete data, another is continuous data. Okay, so what is discrete? Discrete means it can take only certain amount of values. Let's say number of students in a class. So number of students in a class can always be a certain fixed value. Either it will be 1000 in a class, it will be 100, it will be a 50, it can be 10, right? You will always have a definite amount of value. It might be high, but it will have a definite value, that is discrete. So it contains a certain fixed value. So those data are called as discrete data. So when I give you the let's say 2019 grads, a list of students who have graduated from a college, that data is actually your discrete data, because you will have a column where you have a number of students that has passed out, which is fixed. So that falls into discrete. Then I might have the student gender, whether it's a male student or a female student in that data. So that would become again your nominal data, because that's the gender, right? Then when I give you the grades that they have got, again that will fall under ordinal data. So you can see that one data can have various forms. Each and every attribute of data would fall into either of these four categories. Okay, so discrete: number of workers in a company, number of employees in a company is again your discrete. Number of home runners in a baseball game, number of players in a cricket team, number of players in a football team, all these have a definite value. So these are all your discrete data. Okay, and the last one that you have in quantitative data is your continuous data. Means can take value within a specific interval. Let's say height of children's that I tell you. So height of a children can be specific or can be within a range, right? Let's say height of children can be between 2 to 3 feet, for example, just roughly I'm saying. So you can have a static value, or you can have a value within range, within a specific interval. Okay, let's say the square footage of 2 bedrooms, the speed of car. So the speed of car can be is continuous because it might vary. Speed of car can never be, let's say I cannot say my car speed is always at 90 kilometers per hour. So how do you represent? You might have an average speed. An average can be given as a interval as well. Let's say 80 to 90 kilometers per hour is my car speed. So that is continuous data. When you find a range, you find an interval where you do not have a discrete value, your data becomes continuous. So any data that you get in the world can be categorized into these two, subdivided by these four categories: nominal, ordinal, discrete, continuous. And mainly data is into two types: qualitative and quantitative. Clear? Any doubt in this?
No, that's quite clear.
That's clear, right? So it's pretty important that you remember this data differentiation. So let's say, as I was talking, that I take the students data of my 2019 graduated students data. If I take, let's say, any college gives you, so what could be the columns, what could be the data comprised of? Data could be comprised of, let's say, student names, right? Students age, right? The grades they have got, okay? Then the year of pass out, which year they have passed out. Okay, what is the gender, what is the gender of the student, male or female. Okay, and number of students in each, number of students, let's say, in specific domain. Let's say if I talk about computer science, how many students were in computer science, how many students. So I mean, let's say it's actually the branch of study, which branch they studied. It could be IT, it could be computer science, it could be electrical, electrical and communication, different domains. So now let's analyze this data. So student name. So what type of data this will be, Kevin?
The qualitative nominal data.
Absolutely correct. So it's a name, so it will go under nominal data. Age, what would age become then?
Age is a number, so that'll be qualitative data, could be continuous.
No, it will be discrete, because yeah, it could be continuous, yes, but mostly there is a doubt. This depends how your data is given. Mostly you will find age as a discrete data, because nobody will give you a range of age. Age is just a fixed number. Height can be varying, based on your measuring way, your height might vary. So if you are measuring through a tape, it might be, let's say, 5 feet 6 inch. If you are measuring through, let's say, in scale, you might get an inches few here and there. So you might give a range in terms of your height, but your age, 90% chance it should, 95% it should be discrete, right? Then grades.
I'm confused on that. So When you say, talking about continuous, you're taking ages of students in a class. So
Mhm.
it may range, say, from 19 to 35 years. How is that
Yes.
different from the height? Because if you get a height of one student, it could be 5'6".
No, no, no. I'll tell you why. Yes. So what
Okay.
happens is when I take student by student, let's say
Mm-hmm.
Kevin is a student, Paul is a student, Bob is a student. Okay. Now, when I take individually data row wise, then your age that you give me is become a discrete, because one entity can have a fixed amount of age. Kevin cannot fall into an age category of 19 to 30. You can fall later, but when I say specifically, it can fall into a range. But what you are saying is also correct. When I check the overall data, so let's say this is the student name column and this is the age column. Now only this age column can start as low as 18, right, in college, and can end up and fall under as high as, let's say, 50. So when you look at holistically the age column, then it becomes your continuous data, because you have an interval of 18 being the minimum and 50 being the maximum. That's your continuous data. Similarly, that happens to your height as well. But sometimes what happens, sir, there are various ways of seeing a data. There are various angles of seeing a data. But when you see only Kevin, only Paul, and only Bob is a single student and an entity, you might see a specific value of age, let's say 19, let's say 20, specific value of age. In that case, it becomes discrete. So it depends how you are dealing with the data. Are you dealing the data holistically? Then it becomes a continuous value. And when you deal about an individuality or a specific granularity level, it might turn into a discrete value.
Okay.
Okay. So that's how, it's always, it's like that. So you can see a data at a specific angle, but I can see the data at a different angle. But when we have a common goal, when you want to identify the age range, definitely that will become continuous, because it will fall from 18 to 50. That time, if I look into the data from a individuality angle, then I'm doing a mistake. My evaluation criteria is wrong, because it's not matching with the goal that I'm having, right? So these are the various types of data that we can learn about. Okay, so now let me quickly go to the next one. So this is again very, very important. So now we're going to learn about different types of statistics. Okay, so what are the different types of statistics? So we have learned what is statistics, correct? So but we need to know that what are the types that these statistics can be divided into. So statistics can be widely divided into two. One is called descriptive statistics, another is called inferential statistics. And this is very, very important. This is also important as a part of your machine learning. This is also important, but inferential statistics also plays a very major role in your machine learning exercises. So if I give you a data, okay, there can be two approaches to it. You can, if you are good at statistics, you might be good enough to take some insights statistically. You might not use any machine learning. It's not compulsory that every data you take has to go through a machine learning exercise. No, lot of data can give you insights much better even through your statistical methods only. You don't have to know machine learning. If you are a good statistician, you can still deal with the data better, right? So statistics can be divided into two. One is descriptive and another is inferential. Now what is descriptive statistics? Okay, so what is the reason of the statistic types? What happens at a specific reason of dealing with statistics is you have a cause to which you do a decision making, right? So you might have a requirement or a cause or a need, and based on which you will take certain decisions based on your data insight. So descriptive statistics it refers to what has already happened. So when your data tells you something that has already happened, historic, we call it as descriptive statistics. That means if I give you the 2019 student pass out data, right? That has already happened. So that becomes descriptive data. What is inferential? It says what might have been. It refers to what might also happen. So inferential means it's inferred. We are inferring something. Okay. So let's say I'm telling you that last 3 days it's been raining in Florida, right? So with whether it will rain or not. So looking into the historical data of last 3 days, you might guess or you might predict that it might rain tomorrow also. It might happen or that might not happen. So what is being referred to as might also happen is called as inferential statistics. If something has already happened, that's descriptive because it's describing you what happened in the history. But what might also happen tomorrow, which may be true, may not be true, is known as inferential statistics, which is a portion, you can say, the future. That based on my statistical data analysis of last 1 year, I am saying next year it might be like this. So before ML, let's say if you are trying to predict your sales next year as a company, without any ML exercise, you can still predict it through statistical measures. So based on your 2020 sales data, which is your descriptive data, you are trying to infer what could be your next year's in sale in 2021. That figure might happen or might not happen. There's no fixed hard and fast guarantee associated with it. So those are the things we call it. These are the different things that we deal in statistics. So what is the descriptive statistics deals with then? So descriptive analysis or condition helps to move us to inferential state of what might also happen. Okay. So example, you can say that the career history of player is descriptive and predicting the future performance would be inferential. Just give me 1 sec. Okay. Yeah. So the best example could be, so let's say you have the data of all the players of a football team, right? So last till 2019, what are the various performances that they have got, their career history you have. That's your descriptive data. And when you are predicting their performance, what could be in 2021, that is your inference, you are predicting. So these are the two types of data that you might have. Clear, or you have any questions?
No, that's clear.
Okay. So now when we talk about descriptive data, there are various measures of you know dealing with your descriptive data. So statistics that is describing you the history or what has already happened has various types to it. One is, we'll talk about each of this. We will talk about this, what is called central tendency, variability, relative standing, and relationship. So actually, these are various. There are other ways, pretty different ways to deal with it. So we will see about all these individually. What does each of these data is, kind of telling me, or what is, kind of the data that tells us what is this. So we'll talk about descriptive statistics, and then in inferential statistics there are various statistical methods that we apply. We have something called as t-test, we have something called as ANOVA testing, we have something called as regression testing, we have something called as non-parametric chi-square testing. So these are certain methods where if I have the historical data and I apply any of these methods in on my historical data, it will allow me to predict what might happen tomorrow. So it will help me to make some inference. So based on that inference, based on my descriptive history of data, I'm applying certain inferential statistical methods that I have and trying to predict the future. So that's what is your statistical types are all about. Clear, or any questions on this?
No, clear.
Okay. So we are learning it in a specific hierarchy. Okay, so we learned what is statistics, we are learning about the types of data, then we learned about the types of statistics. Now what we're going to talk is about big data. So we are not going to do anything of hands-on, but we have to understand the concepts. So with the enormous amount of data that we have, advancement of statistics has been found predominantly happening when you are dealing with enormous corpus of data, which is called as big data. So what is big data? So a set of data that cannot be managed, processed, or analyzed with the traditional utilization of softwares or algorithms within a reasonable amount of time is called as big data. So let's say you have a software, whatever the current softwares are there in the market, with the normal traditional software I'm talking about. So let's say Excel. Microsoft Excel gives me to see my data, right? But Microsoft Excel has the limit. I think it can hold up to 1.7 billion amount of data. Beyond this, it cannot hold. So if I have a data set which is having, let's say 3 billion, I think it's not billion, it's million, my bad, sorry. It's 17 million. I think it's 1.7 million. More than that, it cannot hold. So 1.7 million rows it can have to a maximum. So if I have a data which is, let's say, almost having 3 million values, right? I cannot visualize that data in an Excel file, because till 1.7 million I can see. Excel will not tell me the data from the beyond this. I cannot even see that data. So that means remaining 1.3 million data is not being processed using Microsoft Excel. So that means whenever your traditional methods are not enough, so that means 3 million data is actually very huge for my traditional Excel to hold it and display it to me. So I will opt for something which is of higher or advanced method. Let's say probably a high-end database, which can hold 3 million data records, right? So that means the data corpus was so huge that my traditional algorithms or softwares were not able to visualize or hold the data. I had to approach for, so to see the data or to play around with the data or analyze, I have to go for a higher end technology. So that is called is your big data. So what could be the best example? Let's say the New York Stock Exchange generates 1 terabyte of new data per day. That means they generate 1 TB, and I think it will be very of new trade data per day. I think it's pretty less. What I think from where I would have got this, uh, but I am definitely sure New York Stock Exchange would generate more than 1 TB of data per day. It should be pretty more. Okay, so might be this is little incorrect, but yes. So they might be generating some thousands TB of data every day, right? For example, if you ignore this, let's say Facebook, how much amount of data would Facebook be generating at a specific day? Do you think that data you can see in an Excel file? Is it possible? No, right? Definitely not. So to see the entire corpus of data for Facebook, you need some high-end applications or tools. So that's what is your big data. Any questions on that?
No.
Right. So let's move on to the next. Now let's see what are the various types of data that are available. So one more thing that I wanted to talk. So in big data, we have a concept called as 5 V's. 5 V's. Okay. That's how you define your big data. So first V, so that means I have 5 V's in big data. V, 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 and V. So the first V is actually volume. Okay, that means what's the size of your data? That's your first V. That means next is velocity. Velocity means how quickly can I access their data because of its volume. Next is variety. What is variety? Variety is nothing but what are the various varieties of the data, whether it's name, whether it's image, whether it is whether it is a text or whether it is video, anything. Another is value. So what is my value? Whether it is worth processing this much amount of data, whether it will give me any insight or not. That's the value from the data. And the last V is called as, we call it as veracity. So don't confuse between velocity and veracity. Velocity is the speed or accessible, how quickly I can access, and this is veracity. That means what is the, whether my data is traceable or not. That means what is the source of my huge amount of data. So if you know the source or your data is traceable, that means you know the veracity of the data. So these are the 5 V's that happens in a big data scale. So based on this, where we define what a big data is all about. Now when we talk about the types of data, okay, so when we talk about the types of data in a big data, so we can have three types. We'll talk about it more detail later, but we have to just see that what could be the various types in a big data. So one could be your structured data. Okay, this is your structured data. So when I give you a data in an Excel or properly structured, let's say it's an employee database. So I have the employee IDs, I have the employee name, I have the gender, I have the departments, I have the salary in lakhs, which is salary in millions probably in US, right? So this is a data which is pretty much structured and inline. So if I have the data this way always, we call it as structured data, but data is not always of this type. Okay. Now what is unstructured data? So whenever I tell you a data that is, that is classified as unstructured would be when you have something like this. If I do a Google search, let's say I'm Google searching what is big data, I am getting enormous amount of results. I don't know which one is absolutely correct, which one is partially correct. It's just some output based on some algorithm. So I have the data, but it is not structured. It is not conveying me a specific set of information until I deep further or I analyze it further. Okay. And what is semi-structured data? Semi-structured data contains both the forms of data. It can be little structured and somewhat unstructured. So for example, if I give you a table in XML, so XML is a format of carrying your data. We call it as extensive markup language. Okay. So let's say I give you a table like this of any personal information where you have a name, you have the age, gender, you have the age. It is not in this tabular format, but some sort of an XML data format, which is machine readable in some way. Human can also read. So we call it a semi-structure because it's not properly in a table, but somewhat readable. So it is in some sort of a structure. So these are the 3 different types of data that can come out in your any data source that you pull in. So generally, structured data amount is very less. You always, majority of your data is unstructured. So let's say roughly, if I say, let's say 40% of your data might be structured anywhere. Okay. 50% of your data, no, this should be much more less. This should be, let's say 20% of data might be structured when you try to pull out anything. Okay. And 70% of your data might be mostly remain unstructured or in a different format, and 10% of your data might always remain in a semi-structured format. So that's how the count goes. So these are the various approaches to the different types of data that we can generate from a data source, right? So anything on this?
Not really.
Pretty simple, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So now next we're going to talk about certain very important statistical terms. Those are very predominantly used in your machine learning part. And this I'm going to be using extensively when I deal with machine learning. So you have to remember these terms, get it straight by heart. You need these terms. anywhere you saw a machine learning engineer talking or a data scientist talking, so they would eventually deal with these jargons in a statistical way. So we have something called as population, we have something called as sample, we have something called as parameter, and we have something called as statistics, right? Sorry, statistic. So these are the four jargons that are predominantly used across all these statistical measurements that I'm going to work across along my all machine learning exercises when I want to learn or know my data pretty well. Okay, so these are the four things. Now let's see what each of this explains to me. So what is actually a population? So population is nothing but we represent the entire universe of all the possible data that can be generated for a specified object. Let's say I have a website. Okay, so let's say you have a website. So all the number of customers that are visiting your website daily, okay, visiting your website daily becomes your entire population of your data set. So let's say I want to understand how many people are visiting my website on a daily basis. So when I pull out the data, the number of people visited my entire website for a day is actually my entire population. So if Facebook wants to see the number of people who have logged into Facebook at a specific day, that's the entire population of the data. That means something that holistically represents the total amount of data that can be generated for a specific object. Whatever object it might be. It might be per day Facebook user login, per day the number of tweets that are being tweeted. Every possible object that generates an enormous corpus of data is represented something called as the population. So when I say population, I mean my entire amount of data, entire data set. It could be 1 million, 10 million, 20 million, 30 billion. So the entire representation of my data volume is what is called as population, like the population of the world, right? Population of the world represents the entire number of people that are there in this world. Now, what do you mean by sample in that? Right? So sample is a selection of observations from a population. So when I have an entire population, from a population, okay, from a population, I am selecting a certain range of data based on a specific criteria. So selection of any random observation from a population. Okay, so let's say I have a population, I have a data of the number of people who has visited my website today, right? That's my entire population. Okay, so now I want to see how many people from this population have visited from an IP address of range 123.123. I'm just hypothetically saying, okay? So then I might have a column which says IP address, right? Then what I'll do, I'll filter my data in an Excel on IP address 123.123. Then my data would become short, right? This data would be updated. So that data, let's say this entire data is 10 million of population, is the entire number of 10 million people visited my site, out of which people who visited from this range of IP address is, let's say, 1 million. So from a 10 million of population, 1 million is my sample. Now sample of what? Sample of IP address ranging from 123.123. I can create one more sample which might be based on TTL, cost time to leave, how long they were there in my website. Okay, so let's say I want to again create one more sample of people who stayed in my website for more than 30 minutes. So from this I might have again another column which says duration. So I'll filter it on 30 minutes. I'll have another sample of people, okay, from my population. This, let's say this is my sample 1. I have a sample 2 where I have people who stayed for more than 30 minutes on my website. So a population is the entire data set where from a population I can create multiple samples which can be unique or similar. Mostly it's a unique one, which can be unique, and I can create clusters or groups based on different criteria. Right? So are you clear to this? What is a population and what is a sample?
Yes.
Okay. Now, so you can see here that your population was this. Okay. I choose a random set of people which became my sample, out of which I wanted to identify the people with blue dress, or let's say what was the color and what was the gender. So it was individuality, and then I have uh, going to identify the color and the gender. So I further divide the data like this. So samples can further be resampled, can be further resampled. So from a population, I can have sample 1, I can have sample 2, I can have sample 3. These samples can further be subdivided sample 2.1, sample 2.2, that's up to you. How one sample, if this is sample 3, I can further create it as sample 3.1. So this is how you divide the data from into a population and a sample. Now what is a parameter? So parameter is numerical value associated with my population. Example, average hours spent on website. So population is actually something, it is not observed, but it is there. Okay. So parameter is something which is numerically associated with my population. So average number of hours or minutes, if I want to find if how many average number of hours or minutes one has spent on my website. So that's a parameter. Based on that parameter, I can create a sample out of a population. Okay. So how many articles are larger than 1 KB? If I have a entire data of Wikipedia, there might be a column which says size of the data. So I can, from this population of entire Wikipedia corpus, I can choose a parameter that file size larger than 1 KB. Okay. And I can create a sample out of my population. That is called parameter. And what is statistic? Not statistics, but what is statistic? Numerical value observed within observed sample. That means it is related to parameter. So my first parameter of a population was how many articles are larger than 1 KB in my Wikipedia population. So parameter is numerically associated with any population, but statistic is also numerically associated, but not with the population, but with the observed sample. That means if I have a sample of file size greater than 1 KB, let's say this is my sample, then what is my statistic actually denotes? How many of these chosen articles are larger than 1 KB? So how many are actually, from my observed sample, how many are actually, numerically associated with my sample. So if I would rephrase, let's say average number of hours spent on my website. So that's my population. So then I wanted to find total hours I have. Average hours spent on my website is one of my parameter based on which I can create a sample. And then what would be my statistic? Average time spent on a website on a day. So now let's say this is my average hour of each customer coming to my site. Now if I further this sample, which is created based on average hour, now if I further drill down it to number of average time or spent on a day, I can create one more further sample. This is average hour holistically, but from this I can again check that for today what was the standalone average hour spent on my website. So what is statistic actually represents is you have an observed value and you have something called as non-observed value. So we go from observed to non-observed. That means from sample, okay, we go to population. So remember, population is something which is never observed, but it is there. Sample is something which we called as observed. So these are statistical terms. That's how you define it in statistics. You cannot have any definition, but that's the definition. So population. So actually, we don't deal much with these two. Statistic is not that much widely used. It's, if you are completely into the statistical domain, you might use statistic, but you should know this term, that to population is my entire data set. From a population I can have a parameter to create a sample, and from so parameter is numerically associated with population. And from a sample, when I want to create, let's say, one more sample, as I can use statistic, and statistic is numerically associated with an observed sample. So population, sample, parameter, statistic. These are the four important measures that you should remember. And we're going to use these jargons of population, samples pretty often. Right. Hope it's clear, right?
Yes, it is.
So next we're going to talk about something called as what are the various statistical measures. Okay. What are the various statistical measures that we can have. So generally under your discrete statistics, okay, we have two types. So actually this is the diagram. So we're going to talk more about this. So today we're going to talk till here. So my descriptive statistics which I have learned. So what is my descriptive statistics? My descriptive statistics is something which has been, so if I go back on my slides. So what do we know about descriptive statistics? That anything that is applied already or which is history is my descriptive statistics. Okay. So descriptive statistics is actually divided into two types. One is called as measure of central tendency and another is called as measure of dispersion. Okay. So what is my measure of central tendency? That's what we're going to learn now. So measure of central tendency is the summary statistic that represents the center point or typical value of a data set. So what do you mean by central tendency? So whenever we measure things of some kind, of same kind, okay, a fairly large amount of measurement will tend to cluster around the middle value. So let's say if I'm taking age of various students and at a scale of 1 to 10, so I can have, if I take, let's say, age will not be a proper example, but let's say temperature of 1 week. Okay. So temperature of 1 week in terms of Celsius, if I take, okay. So let's say temperatures could be 32 degrees Celsius, 33 degrees Celsius, 34 degrees Celsius, 35 degrees Celsius, 36 degrees Celsius, and 37 degrees Celsius. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of 5 days. Okay. So now, whenever you measure anything of same kind, here the kind is temperature, a fairly large amount of measurement will tend to cluster within the range of the middle value. That is called a central tendency or measurement of central tendency in statistics. That means, let's say if I take an average, okay, so if I do an average of these numbers, so 32 plus 33 plus 34 plus 35 plus 36 plus 37, it's 207 divided by how many values? 1, 2, 3, 6, right? So average is coming as how much? 41.5. Oh, sorry, I think I did a mistake. So what is this? It's 32 plus 33 plus 34 plus 35 plus 36 plus 37. So it's 207 divided by how many values? 6. It's 34.5. So any number that you take and take an average, okay? Sorry, I'll just erase this piece. So any number that you take and then take an average, okay? So any number that you take and then take an average, 34.5 is the average value of all this. That means it is coming somewhat lying here. So this is my average value somewhere here in this scale. So that's what is your central tendency in statistics says, that whenever you measure anything of same kind, fairly your large amount of data, that means out of my 6, here it is very small, out of my 6 I see 34.5 is my average. That means when I plot it in a graph, I can say that most of the time my average temperature would fall in 34.5 of range 34.5. That means if I histogrammatically represent it, so every time you draw any diagram of any values or any measurement, there will be always a central tendency that majority of your data would fall into the center of your data. So if I take this scale, so obviously in this side, this is my center. This is the center of my scale. So a large amount of data would tend to fall into the center of my data. That is called as your central tendency. You take anything, any measuring thing in the world, then when you plot that data, you will see that a majority of the data of your is falling under a category which is tending to be in the center stage. So that tendency or that measurement of the data to be at a center value is called as central tendency in statistics. Clear, or you have any doubt on this?
No, that's clear, Paul.
That's clear, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what is called your central statistics. So it's getting into a little bit of mathematics. If you don't understand, let me know. Okay. Next type that we can talk about. So one thing that we can talk about more in central tendency is, so in your descriptive data summary, those single value, so data would tend to be, data would try to be falling at a central tendency or the central part of your data. Then, so if you take any histogram, generally we represent central tendency by histogram. So histogrammatically, when you create any graph, okay, of x-axis and y-axis, okay, your data would be kind of these building blocks, right? So your majority of the data would be represented in your center. That means if you take a scale of 70 to 130, which is the middle of your scale. So if you divide it into two equal parts, this is your equality range of equation, or range of equality, right? So your majority of the data will tend to fall in this region of the central part. That's statistics. That's statistically proven. And that measure is called as measure of central tendency. Right? Now, what are the various types of measurement of central tendency? This we will talk in tomorrow's session, but I'll just give you a hint. So measurement of central tendency is nothing but there are three things. One is called as mean, another called as median, and another called as mode, M-O-D. So we'll see what are these individually in tomorrow's session. So these are the three measurements that are used to determine what percentage of my data is appearing as in my center part of the data. So these are the mean, median, and mode. We know all these terms, but we may not know that these are the part of a measurement in statistics called as central tendency. So these three parameters always helps you to determine that the amount of data that would tend to fall in the center part of the equal half portion of your data calculation. Okay. So that's your central tendency. The next measurement that we have for statistic is called as measure of dispersion. Okay. So what is measure of dispersion? So dispersion is actually a state of getting dispersed or spread. So statistical dispersion means the extent to which your numerical data is likely to vary about an average value. In other words, we can say dispersion helps to understand the distribution of the data. That means how spreaded or how wide is my data distribution. So when you measure a data on a scale of 1 to 10, your data dispersion would be pretty much tight. When you determine data on at a dispersion scale of 1 to 100, so the moment you are expanding your scale, your distribution of the data is increasing. It becomes more spreaded because your value range is spreaded. So what is your data dispersion? Dispersion is actually a measurement which tells me that to what extent is my numerical data likely to vary from an average value. So if I have take the same scale from 33 to 37, where I saw that my median average value is 34.5. So dispersion will help me to understand. So this is my middle value, right? So dispersion will help me to understand that the entire data, how wide or how spreaded it is from my average value. So that's how you represent the graphically here. So what we did, so this is our middle value, okay, at any scale. So dispersion tells me what is my spread of data. So this is telling my data is very spreaded. Okay, this pink color says that data is somewhat spreaded, but it is little skewed, and this purple color is showing me that my data is not that spreaded across my mean value. So if I take this as my center or my average value, with respect to this is showing it is widely spreaded. This pink color shows it is somewhat spreaded, and this is shows it is tightly spreaded, like little tight. The graph is coming like this. So my dispersion, my spread is not that much. But for this pink one, my spread is little more, right? And when I go with my sky color one, see my spread is the maximum here. Or my spread would actually be maximum here. And the spread would be minimum where? Here. Because the data is following some sort of a distribution. So that's the measurement of dispersion, that how spreaded or how widely spreaded is my data from a value called as average value. So what are my various ways of identifying the dispersion? So if I tell you that if you look into this graph, okay, how spreaded, so this black graph is actually denoted as wide. If this is my average value, so I can say this black graph represents the data which is wide dispersion, whereas this graph in red, I can say this is closed dispersion. So this could be two different data. This is one data set, this is another data, and this is my mean value, average value. So this tells me whether my data is wide like this or my dispersion of data is like this. So whenever you have a graph, okay, and you have your dispersion like this, it is pretty close dispersion. And when you can say the spread of the data is not that big. And then when you have a graph like this, let's say you have a graph like this, you can say your dispersion, your data spread is more. So your data is dispersed across a wide range of value, and it deviates from your average value to a higher extent. Now to measure what are my dispersion measurements, we're going to talk about this tomorrow. We have something called as range is the first thing. Second thing is called as variance. These are very, very important. This is super important in machine learning. Variance. We have something called as standard deviation, super important to understand. We have something called as quartiles division, super important in machine learning. And we have something called as mean deviation, which is also super important. So compared to range, it is not, you have to understand, but variance, standard deviation, quartile, and mean deviation, these four are very, very important as star marked in machine learning to understand how spread your data is. What is the dispersion of your data? You have to understand at any given data set, you need these four parameters. And it is an integral part, bread and butter of machine learning. Else you will never understand what is your data telling you, right? Any questions on this, Kevin?
Not at this time. I think that was very clear.
So we have spoken about statistical measures of central tendency, that how much centrally my data is standing. So at a statistical assessment, your maximum your data would tend to be at the center of your data spread. That is your central tendency theorem, what it says. We'll see there is something called a central tendency theorem also, we talk about it. And then we saw what is the dispersion of the data. That means how dispersed is my data. So how means how do we check? We have some measures which we will talk about tomorrow, but dispersion tells me what is the spread of my data from a average or a mean value, whether it is widespread, whether it is close dispersion. So these are the things, that was there. So that's what we had in my last slide that we're going to talk. So we saw that measure of central tendency tells me that if I have a graph, okay, and if I have some bar chart, okay, if I have a bar chart drawn, so majority of my data would tend to fall in the central part. This is my measurement of central tendency. And what is my measure of dispersion? It tells me that when I have a value represented with my average value, if I want to see how wide is my data, what is the spread of my data, if a data spread is represented like this, you can say this is kind of a close spread. Sorry, yeah, this is kind of a close widespread. And if my data is spreaded like this, let's say, I can say this is a close spread. So this is my measure of dispersion. So what are the ways that I can learn how to do a central tendency? So central tendency is done through mean, median, and mode, whereas my measure of dispersion is done through something called as range, interquartile range, standard deviation, and variance. We're going to talk about this 3 plus 4, 7 items tomorrow, and see some further aspects of statistics. So today we covered up pretty much basics of statistics, the measures of statistics, what is data, what is big data, different types of data, right? So before we wind up, any questions or what's your overall outcome from your session, from today's session?
No questions. This is quite familiar from what I've dealt with in the past, so I quite understand it.
So how do you relate it? Where did you come across all these concepts?
I did statistics in my undergrad.
Okay. So that means I don't have to spend much time for you to understand what is a mean, median, and mode, right? Right. So then we'll just roughly see then tomorrow what is mean, median, and mode, just the definition, since we are just recording the session as well. And then we'll talk a little bit about. So do you know what is an interquartile range also? What is an IQR?
Interquartile range doesn't sound familiar, and the range, but standard deviation and variance is familiar.
Okay. So what do you mean by a variance in the standard deviation? I'm just roughly asking.
Standard deviation is the steps away from the mean, right?
Absolutely. Yes. So actually, if I tell you, so generally when you represent your data, okay, so if your data spread is somewhat like this, so what does your mean or standard deviation tell you, right? Or what does your mean or variance tell you? So if let's say my data is spreaded this way, we call this as a Gaussian, we call it as normal distribution, okay, called it as in statistics. This is if you have any data and your graph is appearing like this, you can say your data is normally distributed. Normally distributed means if this is my mean, okay, which is represented by mu, okay, so dispersion tells me the spread, right? So if this is my mean, okay, so what is my standard deviation? Square root of the variance is known as standard deviation. So variance is actually represented by sigma. So if I do a square root of sigma, that's my variance, standard deviation, right? And what is my variance? My variance sigma is actually equal to x is the value minus mu, which is the mean, and this one's I think, yeah, this one's whole square divided by n, something like this is the formula. I'll confirm it tomorrow, but yeah, that's x minus mu by n is my variance. So variance is nothing but when you deduct the mean from each data in the set and then squaring them off and adding the each square. Okay, now I remember the formula. So actually sigma is equal to, or you can say sigma square, variance square is equal to summation of x minus mu whole square divided by n. So that's your sigma variance value. And then when you have your sigma and then you take a square root of your sigma, this is your standard deviation. So your what is your data tells? So if this is my data dispersion, okay, and this is my mean of the data, this is represented as mu. Standard deviation tells me how much deviated is my data. So we have something called as empirical value and all those things that we will talk about tomorrow. So what is my spread of the standard deviation? Mu plus 1 sigma this side, and this side we call it as mu minus 1 sigma. So we call this region as mu plus minus 1 sigma. So that's something called as empirical rule. So we're gonna talk about all this as well. Okay. All right. So I think, yeah, we are done with today's session. So I think if we don't have any further questions, I think, yeah, we can conclude, right?
Okay.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Kevin, for your time. We'll talk tomorrow then.
See you
Bye-bye.
tomorrow.
Yep. Bye-bye.